60 Russian diplomats have been ordered to leave the US in response to Russia's alleged involvement in the poisoning of double agent Sergei Skripal in the UK. It's part of a coordinated series of expulsions by Western countries. The US State Department says it takes the UK's word that Russia was responsible for the attack.
We certainly know that Russia is responsible for that attack. That is something that is not in question. That's something that the Brits and many other countries have said as well. Well, we stand strongly with our ally, with the UK. And when the UK tells us that they have proof that they know Russia was responsible, we have every reason to believe them. Okay.
You haven't seen their evidence, their proof?
I've not personally seen their proof. That would not come over to the State Department. That would most likely go to another building. So I'd refer you to any of those other intelligence departments that deal with us.
RT's Samira Khan was at the recent State Department briefing on the expulsion of Russian diplomats.
The main topic of discussion was Washington's expulsion of Russian diplomats, the most out of all countries to do so, over the alleged poisoning of a former double agent and his daughter on British soil. Spokeswoman Nauert was bombarded with questions regarding evidence or lack thereof, and most boiled down to whether the U.S. possesses any concrete evidence linking Russia to the crime and if the expelled diplomats were really spies.
How do you know these specific 60 people were
that would be an intelligence matter.
I mean, can you give us any kind of example of what these people were doing that made them not real diplomats?
I don't have access to that kind of information.
What were they, jumping the subway turnstiles or something? I mean, what
Matt,
exactly is...
I get it. You're being funny.
It's different with the UN. Don't you have to provide evidence to the UN?
I think I just answered that I don't know the answer to that. If I can get an answer for you, I would be happy to provide it.
While answering, Nauert basically admitted that Washington hasn't seen any proof, but somehow they've still decided to take London's claims as gospel. Now, I had the rare opportunity to ask a question, and I mentioned that the OPCW, or the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, hasn't released the results of the investigation as yet, and she said that Russia wasn't cooperating.
We look forward to the OPCW completing its investigation. We also hope at the same time that Russia will return to the UN Security Council and will agree to some sort of a mechanism like the joint investigative mechanism that they had stood in the way of and, in fact, defeated numerous times.
Well, Nauert blatantly ignored the fact that Russia has been saying it's ready to cooperate with British authorities since the day of the assassination attempt. So it seems that Washington doesn't believe in its own philosophy that one is innocent until proven guilty.
Russia has long arms. Russia has lots of tentacles. We imagine that they will continue to have an interest in our elections, but also many other nations' elections as well.
Arms and tentacles.
Arms and tentacles, that's right.
Quite a beast.
It's like
can you just, I just want
It's a beast from the deep sea.
It's part of a much bigger scenario that's taking place. You know, some people refer to it as a new Cold War, but in some ways it's more dangerous than the old Cold War. But, you know, there's a certain hypocrisy involved. You think of how serious this is and the response to this compared to how serious it was when the United States and Britain and the others invaded Iraq. Did all these European countries stand up and expel American diplomats for an invasion of Iraq that was far more serious? Of course not. You know, this is part of a Cold War positioning with the West standing up against Russia and Russia responding. But I think that if we're going to take such strong action, we need firm proof, and we need to begin presenting some of this evidence to the public.
The incident Russia is implicated in happened on March the 4th, when a former Russian intelligence agent turned British spy, together with his daughter, were found unconscious on a park bench in the UK city of Salisbury. The authorities suspect Sergei and Yulia Skripal were poisoned by a nerve agent of a type produced in the Soviet Union. Moscow denies any involvement in the poisoning and says its attempts to cooperate with London on the matter continue to be ignored.